What is up, guys? It's Baseball Nerd. Going to be starting a new series today looking at different teams' infields, outfields, starting rotations, and bullpens and kind of ranking them going into next season. As far as like free agents and stuff, we're going to kind of base this off of if all free agents stay where they are, if it's the same teams as last year. I know it's not going to happen. I know some guys are going to move, probably some big guys too. So I know this is all subject to change, and hopefully no one changes or gets picked up by a new team while these videos are being made. But hopefully I can get them out before all that happens. So yeah, we're gonna get into it. The first list we're gonna do is just starting rotations, and I kind of based all of these off roughly off of a WAR from last year. I looked at the WAR of every starting rotation, every bullpen, and then I added up all the infield positions to get the infield, all the outfield positions to get the outfield, and I roughly based it off of that. There's some guys that didn't play this season that if they were on their team probably would have bumped up their team more. The Mets losing Syndergaard and Stroman, and then like a lot of teams just having injuries or people opting out. David Price opting out of already a stacked Dodgers rotation, stuff like that. I think Chris Sale missing time, and some younger guys coming up for some other teams. Justin Verlander, huge name, he was out for the Astros. That would have made their rotation even more dominant with Greinke and McCullers and Urquidy and Framber Valdez. So yeah, just a lot of guys that missed out. So I tried to take in last year's WAR, 2020's WAR, and add in some of those guys that probably would have helped out those teams, and then think about what we think will be happening in 2021. So maybe some a little uptick in output or production from some of the rookies or the prospects coming up, hopefully, for some of these teams. And so we're going to start from the bottom, work our way up. So the top 12 is going to be top 12, and then we're going to have some honorable mentions. We're going to have about 3 to 4 honorable mentions per infield, outfield, rotation, and bullpen. So for the rotations, we'll start off. We'll give the honorable mentions. I have the honorable mentions going to the Miami Marlins. They have some really young, good starting pitchers. I don't think they're as established as some of the other teams we're going to go into, but I have them the honorable mentions. They're really close to cracking the top 12, but I just couldn't put them in over some of the other teams that I think will be better than them. The Texas Rangers, if they get Kluber back, obviously I don't think that's happening, but Kluber, Lance Lynn, and some other guys they have, I think that's just a really good top 2, and that gets them in the conversation. This is only like, if the honorable mentions are basically, the 13, 14, 15, 16-ish teams. So, right in the middle of the pack, if you have Kluber and Lance Lynn, you definitely should be at least there no matter who's coming after them. The Philadelphia Phillies with Aaron Nola, who had a really good year, and then Zach Wheeler picking it up, and then if Jake Arrieta came back, it could be a solid 3 guy or anything like that. They could definitely have a decent rotation middle of the pack. And then the Chicago Cubs, who really could be higher up in this list. John Lester's getting old. Yu Darvish had such a good year, though, and then there's still, Kyle Hendricks and some other guys there that can pitch. So I think they would be very, very close to making the top 12, but just very, very slightly beat out by some of these next teams. Starting it off at number 12, I have the Atlanta Braves. They have a lot of good young guys in Max Fried and Kyle Wright and stuff like that. And they had some older guys. Cole Hamels didn't pitch, but he could be very good. Ian Anderson had a very good year if he continues and builds off of that. I know he's also older. And same thing, Mike Soroka would be back. So that'd be a huge arm that they'd get. And they already had a pretty good rotation with just Max Fried and some of those guys filling it out. So I think they'd be very solid next year. I think 12 is a very good spot for them. Moving in, we have 11. I have the Minnesota Twins. I think that, Kenta Maeda obviously he had a really, really good year. They have Jake Odorizzi coming back, and just they have other pitchers besides that, but I'm just saying, like, those are 2 guys that I think could build and have even better next year's. Kenta Maeda, obviously, I don't think you can count on him having another Cy Young for sure, but if he pitched that good, I think he could definitely do that again. And yeah, Jake Odorizzi would definitely help them out a lot, and they already had a decent starting pitching staff this year, so I think adding him would help them bump them up into like the top 10 and 11 spot like I gave them. Number 10, we have the Chicago White Sox. I think with Dane Dunning, Michael Kopech, they just have so many good young guys, along with Dallas Keuchel, who's been an established, 2 guy. He was an ace in Houston until they started getting all their pitchers from free agency and whatnot. But, Dallas Keuchel's a very good 2 guy, and then Lucas Giolito, who's just a beast this year, threw a no-hitter, all that. He's a very, very good pitcher. So if those are your top 2, and then you have a bunch of really, really good prospects coming up, that definitely gets you, at least a top 10 spot, in my opinion. And then number 9, we have the Cleveland Indians. I know they lost Clevenger, they lost Bauer, they lost Kluber. They've lost a lot of really good pitchers, but they have a very, very good farm system of pitchers. Tristan McKenzie was coming up this year, and he's very good. They they had obviously, you can't really talk about the Cleveland Indians starting rotation and not mention Shane Bieber, who just won Cy Young by a landslide. He had an insane year. I don't think, obviously, he could do the same thing. He could be a Cy Young back-to-back. There's no doubt about it. But I don't think, as far as going into predictions, you can't predict that somebody's going to completely dominate an entire season again like that. So that's why I'd have them around 9, because I know they could probably be a little higher. They have Plesac and Savall and some other guys still coming up, and obviously Cookie. And so they have a lot of, I feel like they have a lot of good depth. They have good young pitchers coming up, and then they have Shane Bieber, just a really, really good ace. So I maybe could have gone a little higher with the Indians. I maybe could have kept them right where they're at. I just think, you can't count on Shane Bieber to do that every year. A couple of the prospects and Tristan McKenzie and stuff like that aren't completely proven, and but they have a very, very, very good, solid starting rotation. Moving on, we have the Cincinnati Reds, and this is obviously assuming that Trevor Bauer signs back with the Cincinnati Reds, and that's just like a three-headed monster right there with Luis Castillo, and Trevor Bauer and Sonny Gray. I mean, obviously, probably put Trevor Bauer at the ace spot now after that Cy Young year. But Sonny Gray started off the year insane. He was on my fantasy baseball team, and I know for sure he was just putting up insane numbers every week for the first at least half of the season. He was insane. Luis Castillo can be a very, very good pitcher. He could be an ace type of guy on any team. And so if him, Trevor Bauer, and Sonny Gray pitch like they did last year, or even better for Luis or Sonny Gray, then that's just those three right there. It's really hard to beat. And I don't know how great their 4 or 5 guys will be, as they were not that good this year, but the depth that they lack, they really make up for in having those 3 that could go out and win any game against any lineup. So that's why I have them in the 8th spot. Number 7, we have a guy who used to be on the Cleveland Indians as well, and that's Mike Clevenger's team, the San Diego Padres. I think with the way Danielson Lamet came out this year, had a breakout season. Chris Paddock is still getting better. He's not obviously top of the line yet, but he's still very good, still very young, and yeah, so that's hard to beat. A really good young guy like that. Danielson Lamet coming up, very good young guy. And then Mike Clevenger, who's still like maybe entering his prime and is very, very good. And yeah, he was pretty much the ace going into this season for the Indians is what they assumed. And then, he kind of got traded and whatnot. But he's still very good, and obviously wasn't as good as Shane Bieber. That's why they got rid of him. But I don't know why they got rid of him, actually. But yeah, the Padres, very good. I think they will be around the 7 spot. That's why I gave them that. Washington Nationals, I have at number 6. I still think Max Scherzer, he had a little bit of a down year for Max Scherzer. But he had a very good year before that when they won the World Series, and so did Steven Strasburg, and so did Patrick Corbin. And I think that's another 3-headed monster, just like the Reds. I just think, Scherzer, Strasburg, and Patrick Corbin, especially the way they pitched last year, not this 2020 season, 2019 season. I think if they pitched like that they could even beat out the Reds squad. I know their 4-5 is kind of the same as the Reds, not very good. It's kind of a drop off after the top 3, but if your top 3 is that, you're pretty much guaranteed a chance to win every 3 games out of 5. And so it's pretty good chances. I like that. So I think that rotation just is so top heavy, but it's so good in those first 3. If Max Scherzer can do another Cy Young type of year, Steven Strasburg can pitch like he did when he won the MVP of the World Series, and then Patrick Corbin can just be a very, very good 3 starter. If that's your 3rd starter in your rotation, you're doing pretty good. So I have them at 6. Number 5 going on, we have the Houston Astros. And the more I looked at the Houston Astros, I had them starting off around like 8 or 9. I think Justin Verlander is very good. He obviously just got hurt though, missed a year, and he's a little older. So, but he's proved again and again that he doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how old he is. So Justin Verlander is still a very good ace. Zach Greinke, who is nasty this year, tipping pitches, telling people what's coming, and then just fooling them, making them look silly. So he's still very good. If that's your 2 starter, he was in the conversation for Cy Young not that long ago. Lance McCullers, who I only saw him in the playoffs, and I didn't think he pitched that great, but he still could be a very good 3 starter. Jose Urquidy coming up, and he's been very good. And Framber Valdez had an amazing year last year. So I just think they're pitching, and they have Forrest Whitley coming up. So they have a lot of depth, I feel like, and they have young, old, good mix all around. I feel like that's just a very, very solid starting rotation. They kind of make up for like the guys like the Reds and the Reds and the Washington Nationals with those top-heavy rotations. They seem to have the top-heavy, maybe a little less than those, but they have very good depth, and they still have a frontline ace. So then moving in, we have number 4, the Tampa Bay Rays. I I think the Rays had a very good season last year with their starting pitching, kind of a breakout for Tyler Glass. Now, I know he broke out the year before that, but he had a very, very good year, especially going into the playoffs and starting the playoffs, shutting down the Yankees lineup twice in a big playoff game. I know playoffs aren't everything. I just think Tyler Glass now continues on his upward trajectory and does a very good frontline ace. It's the same with Blake Snell. I think he's also, it's almost like hard to tell who's better, in my opinion. They're both very young, lefty, righty. They both throw hard. They both have nasty stuff. I think obviously Blake Snell seemed to step up a little more in the World Series than Tyler Glass now. The Dodgers seem to have Tyler's number, but they're both still very good pitchers, and especially if we're just talking about regular season for next year, I think they both could be very, very good. And then Charlie Morton also there, another, top guy, and then we have Ryan Yarbrough. Just a good mix there too of a veteran, a couple middle-aged guys, and then the two young guys that are just beasts. So I think that's a very good starting rotation, especially if you're building off that for next year. Moving into our top three, at 3 I have the New York Yankees. Garrett Cole, who was obviously could have won Cy Young last year in 2019, and just very, very, very good pitcher. He was still dirty this year, kind of got overshadowed how the Yankees played, but yeah, he was still very good this year, and they have Luis Severino. Tanaka's obviously staying in this projection, and if James Paxton also stays in this projection, so they have a very good depth. I feel like they're the Yankees, so they have a lot of good players. They have old, they have young, they have Clark Schmidt coming up, some other guys, but they just have the prospects, the old guys, the young guys, the guys in their prime, the best pitcher in baseball, and Garrett Cole, one of the. So that's just, yeah, that rotation's just kind of nasty, and if everyone stayed, I feel like it'd still be nasty, and if not, I feel like they're going to pick up someone else that will fill in those spots anyway. So Yankees top 3. Number 2, I have the New York Mets, and that's Jacob deGrom coming back, who's just been in the Cy Young conversation, it feels like, for the last 6 years. He's just been very, very good. And then we have Noah Syndergaard coming back to help him, Marcus Stroman, and those two are actually really happening. Marcus Stroman did accept his qualifying offer, and then I feel like the way Noah Syndergaard could bounce back and Marcus Stroman can bounce back, those guys could each be ace-type pitchers. So I feel like this three-headed monster of deGrom, Syndergaard, and Stroman is just so godly, and that they could really dominate, 3 games out of 5 every series. And it's just, yeah, I feel like that rotation may lack a little depth at the bottom, but they even have Porcello and some guys like that. So I think they could really get it done and be a really dominant rotation. At number 1, we have the World Series champs, the LA Dodgers. I feel like this is just the perfect mix of veteran, of young, of everything, just guys that can eat up innings, guys that have nasty stuff, guys that throw hard, with Kershaw being the vet, and then you have Walker Buehler just in his prime, just a complete ace, just dominating people, and then still having Dustin May, who throws like a 101 sinker and can eat up innings, and then to go with Julio Urias, who we saw in the postseason just dominate out of the pen, but he still could be a starter, and then getting David Price back, and yeah, David Price is not that far away from being an ace of his own, and yeah, that rotation's just insane. That's 5 or 6 guys right there that could all be in the top of any rotation in the league, and I think they're just, yeah, they're stacked all around. They're like the Yankees, not like the Yankees though, because they're World Series champs. But that's my list, guys. If you don't agree, it's totally fine. Let me know. I tried really hard to educate myself on the WAR and how good these teams played in these different positions and not just go based off of names and stuff. But yeah, so that's kind of how I based it off of, and then kind of thought in my own head of who I think's coming back and who could really be good and help elevate some of those teams to a higher WAR, and kind of based it off that. So if you guys agree, awesome. If you don't, let me know. If you do, let me know. Either way, please like and subscribe, and yeah, thank you.